Well, Jim, let's get a question here on the show, and this one was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Daniel O'Connor in County Limerick, Ireland. Greetings, Jim. I have a very good hypothetical question for you.
Well, we'll be the judges of that.
If Bret Hart had stayed with Vince in late 1997, how would he have fit into the oncoming Attitude Era? I know for a lot of Bret's fans, his booking in WCW was poor to say the least. But if he had stayed with Vince, would we have got Bret Hart as Mae Young's lover?
No.
And Bret pulling a hand from Mae Young's vagina on Raw?
No.
What are your thoughts on this hypothetical situation, Jim?
Well, we wouldn't have got that. Bret would have still been a major star in the wrestling business for significantly years if he had stayed. And I mean, of course, and everybody knows why he left. We've covered that to death. And it's not like that he didn't make the right decision at the time, because you couldn't have a time machine and you couldn't tell what was going to happen. You couldn't tell they were going to botch his creative from the start. You couldn't tell that Goldberg was going to give him a, concussion or whatever.
We also didn't, well, let's be honest too, Bret didn't have a choice. Vince was saying, I can't pay you. I'm not going to pay you. I'm going to let you out of the contract. Go see if you can get a better deal somewhere else.
Well, I mean, there was the choice that he could have said, well, no, Vince, just what can you pay me? And I'll stay for anything, which would have been kind of crazy. But there was that choice, but nobody would have taken it. But this is the hypothetical. If he hadn't have left, if he'd have stayed. So if he'd have stayed, if he'd have said, Vince, just give me the same thing you're paying that guy over there and I'll stay or whatever. Okay, now he's staying. He would have been a big star. The one that he would have had the issues with would have been Shitstain, because he would have been the one pitching to Bret Hart to stick his hand up the donkey's ass and pull out the watermelon or whatever the case, right? And Bret would have been going to Vince McMahon, and there would have been significant strife and back and forth. And Bret Hart, I would say 85 to 90% of the time, would probably have gotten his way and it would have got changed. But then therein lies that we know from experience that if you do that, then Shitstain would try to figure you in less and write less for you, which is a blessing, except if you're not getting on television to begin with. But then if it was Bret Hart, and the major star that he was, and then Vince McMahon would have been saying to Shitstain, well, what the fuck are we having Bret do it? Well, Bret's being a problem. Wait a minute, I got to do it like FTR. Bret's being a problem. I've told Eleanor about this many times. What a problem Bret is. And it would have been uncomfortable, and then whoever was in Bret's periphery, which still would have probably included Owen, probably not Neidhart, but whoever was on Bret's side in Bret's social circle would have been on his side, and it would have created a lot of strife, because I believe of anybody, Bret would have probably been the one to push back against Shitstain's Jerry Springer Show bullshit, probably more than anybody else there. The younger guys were glad for the opportunity. The older guys were, happy that they were making money because they were on top. But even then, Undertaker, all of them, all the guys that would have had an issue with their creative were of the level where they could go directly to Vince McMahon and polish up what they didn't like. And that's, so I think that Bret would have obviously still been on top in the Attitude Era. Everybody wanted to work with him. He would have taken everything that he did seriously, so he would have had issues with Shitstain, and Vince McMahon would have had to got in the middle of a lot of them. And I think Bret would have persevered in most cases. And it was the same thing in TNA. With only I was the one going to Jeff Jarrett on behalf of whatever top talent was going, what the fuck is going on here? It would have been Bret in the WWF, because he's probably the only one that Vince McMahon would have listened to and had full access to him that would have put his foot down as stiffly as possible. Does that make sense to you, Brian?
It does. Considering well before Survivor Series, when Bret started teasing being a heel and then kind of became the heel babyface US-Canada thing, Vince and Bret got physical. Bret shoved Vince in the ring when they were taking the cage down. Vince pulled Bret's shirt over him and was hitting him. Even if Montreal doesn't happen, and knowing that, for good or for bad, Vince Russo has a reputation of, who's my boss? I'm going to try to tell them they should be on TV. They really need to be on TV. Do you think we may have gotten, obviously a very different version of it, but would we have gotten a Mr. McMahon as a heel if Bret had stayed?
Without that incident, because remember, we've talked about it, Vince still thought he was going to be the babyface afterwards and just frame it, well, the time-honored tradition, Bret was selfish, whatever. Without that Montreal incident, I don't know, and the subsequent fan response to Vince and to the whole thing, I don't know that anybody could have convinced Vince McMahon that he could be, should be, or it would be beneficial for him to be a full-fledged heel owner. That's because that's the thing that got Vince all the way there. Vince was fully in support of the idea that the Canada, U.S. bizarro world, Bret's people like him, the United States likes Shawn and his band of merry jackoffs. Vince was all into that even before, Shitstain got involved in everything. But I don't think that he would have considered taking that step to make himself a full-time, on-air heel rather than what he had done for the previous, 12, 13 years he'd owned the company. So that, but I still say, Bret was, as you mentioned, Bret and Vince were already going to be at each other's throats on the program, and the people in Canada were going to take it how they took it, and etc. But I don't know if Vince would have gone all the way to Mr. McMahon without Montreal.
Was he itching to be physical, though? Because, that's the thing. He got physical with Bret a couple times.
Yes, yeah. He wanted to be a wrestler when he was a teenager and, idolized Dr. Jerry Graham, and his dad wouldn't let him. And his dad wouldn't let him do things in the 70s when he was an announcer. It's not like he was constantly pitching ideas. He didn't do the Shane thing. But down deep in his mind, he wanted to be physical. He wanted to be one of the boys. He wanted to prove he's got balls as big as grapefruits or whatever his thing was. So, and it just took him till he was 60 years old to actually get the chance to do it, or almost.